expert Reed Bródy, who joined the group of experts in September, and on my far right is Ariela Peralta Distéfano. So today we'll start off with Mr. Simon, the chair, who will read an opening statement, and then we'll open the floor to questions. Please note that this press conference will be held exclusively in English. If you have questions in Spanish, please contact us afterwards, and we'll arrange for you to speak with the experts. Now I pass the floor to the chair, who will start with opening remarks, followed by his fellow experts, and then we will open the floor to questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Good morning. We would like to thank the media for the interest in Nicaragua and in our work. This is the fifth time we are briefing the press about the results of our work in the last 3 years. These results are today based on a total of more than 1,500 interviews and 7,000 documents. Based on these investigations, we can today conclude that the state of Nicaragua and the ruling Sandinista party have virtually fused into a unified machine of repression. This machine is responsible for a myriad of cases of death, arbitrary detentions, enforced disappearances, torture, expulsion of nationals, arbitrary deprivation of nationality, etc., etc. And this machine impacts human rights domestically and transnationally. In our third report that we will present this Friday to the Council, we take a closer look at the details of the machine responsible for the widespread and systematic violations in and outside Nicaragua. The repressive regime in the hands of the Nicaraguan government operates with two large sets of cogwheels. One is a wide intelligence apparatus. The intel apparatus gathers information, surveils the population, and selects targets for the violations of rights. In short, this apparatus acts as the eyes and ears of the government that allows to obtain and maintain total control over the population. The second set of cogwheels consists of a network of state and para-state entities that would then proceed in violating the rights of the targets selected by the intel apparatus. The command of this machinery is designed and managed to operate like tentacles. That is to say that the chain of command structure is designed to guarantee top-down direct control of several links at all operational levels that put in practice these violations. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think any further explanation is needed to establish that the human rights violations of this machinery in the hands of the Nicaraguan regime are not only widespread and systematic. More than that, they are systemic. Thousands of victims, many now in the diaspora, demand the international community to prevent this machinery from continuing to violate human rights. We can only endorse this clamor and again draw attention to our recommendations made since our first report. The international community must act urgently.
I will talk in particular about the new constitutional overhaul, which took effect just a week ago, and is the final piece in Daniel Ortega and Rosario Murillo's calculated campaign to wipe out checks and balances, tighten their grip on power, and turn repression into law. A co-presidency, tailor-made for Ortega and Murillo, complete with the option to name their children as vice presidents, seems less like a constitution and more like a royal decree. The man who once fought against a family dictatorship has now built one that is even more grotesque. But this Constitution doesn't just cement the rule of law of one family. It buries any remaining civil space and guarantees that Nicaraguans whose rights are violated have nowhere to turn. Ortega and Murillo now rule over the judiciary, the legislature, and the electoral system, which under the Constitution have been reduced to mere bodies to be coordinated by the presidency. Under the new Constitution, Ortega and Murillo can now strip away all rights, almost at will, summon the military to act as their police enforcers, and unleash masked volunteer police, now enshrined in the Constitution, to do their dirty work. Among other provisions, the reform deletes the explicit constitutional prohibition against torture, eliminates the ban on censorship of the press, and enshrines the removal of citizenship for those declared to be, quote, traitors to the homeland. This new Constitution sounds the death knell for fundamental rights and the rule of law in Nicaragua.
Thank you, everyone, to be here and attend this conference. As you know, we're going to present the report on Friday, February 28. I'm going to tackle the issue of deprivation of nationality and confiscation. The group has expressed serious concern about several human rights violations through the different phases of repression that we identify since 2018. The numbers of persons without nationality is approximately 452. This number has been accredited by the group directly or indirectly through witness, lawyers, documents, judicial files, etc. This situation suggests to us the universe of a stateless person could be much larger due to the deprivation of nationality that had not been reported to those affected. One of the bases of the testimony collected and the documentation analyzed by the group give us reasonable grounds to believe that the government of Nicaragua continually violates the right to hold a passport or other travel document of persons who are opponent or perceived as such and their families. What we call, it means to those persons a civil death because they don't have any document to try to continue their life or build another life in a foreign country. And also, we call that we name that the victims are also in a situation of economic death. Among 453 persons arbitrarily deprived of their nationality, are being confiscated their asset, bank accounts, pension contribution, share business, and these have been proven with the group. This not also to the victim directly, but also to the family members, and this violation, by extension, are particularly serious when children are involved. In addition, the loss of nationality has nullified the possibility of accessing protection and service, especially those related to the guarantee of basic economic rights, and also to have a new life in a foreign country. Lastly, the National Army and Defense Intelligence, the intelligence, and the Army worked together, identify individuals for expulsion, monitoring, critique through political surveillance, and also are involved, as we related in the report, the Procuraduría and other institutions relating with asset and property. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Now we'll open the floor to questions. First in the room, do we have any in the room? Yes, in the back. If you could just please identify yourself and the media outlet that you work for.
Thank you very much. I am Antonio Broto. I work for Spanish news agency EFE. And my question is related with your call for international action. You mentioned in the report that is needed to address human rights violation in Nicaragua. And do you think there is positive steps in this way from Argentina, who last month ordered the detention of Daniel Ortega and Vice President Rosario Murillo, and also by the U.S. government, who has launched an investigation into labor and human rights abuses in Nicaragua? Thank you.
These are first steps taken by members of the international community. One is related to criminal action regarding those main responsible for the machinery that we are presenting in our report. Though it is under universal jurisdiction and depends on those responsible and being indicted by the Argentinian authorities, their presence in the territory of Argentina in order to proceed with the proceedings. This is a first step to have an international arrest warrant. By the way, the standard of proof that you need in order to issue an international arrest warrant at that stage of the proceedings coincides with our standard of proof. So I think we have added to the preliminary findings of the authorities in Argentina that made them believe that they have enough evidence to issue an arrest warrant. The second is in the U.S. Under Section 301 of the U.S. Trade Act is an unprecedented investigation because the U.S. Trade Act normally is or has been limited to pave the way for activities in multilateral frameworks like the WTO. There have been some other activities since 2018 regarding 301, the Section 301 investigations, but to the broad extent that it is now intended to be applied to the situation in Nicaragua, that's the very first time. You will not find any case at present regarding the situation in Nicaragua under the Trade Act. But this brings me to another topic, which is very much related to this, which is having free trade agreements to take seriously their human rights conditionalities that are implied in these treaties. In particular, the Free Trade Association Agreement between the European Union and Central America. We think that Nicaragua is a case in point since this treaty has come into force mid last year to enforce the global human rights clause that is at the beginning of this treaty and should be taken seriously by the new Commission, European Commission, in this way.
If I could just add, I mean, this report is a call for global action. And part of that action is helping Nicaraguans who have been expelled from their homeland. And Spain in particular, I think it's important to recognize, has played a huge role by offering citizenship to those hundreds of Nicaraguans who have been deprived of their citizenship. Another action that we're calling for is for a state to consider taking Nicaragua to the International Court of Justice for this practice of stripping citizens of their citizenship. No country in the world has used the arbitrary detention of nationality against political opponents at the same scale that Nicaragua has done. And this is a violation of its obligations under international law, under the Convention on the Reduction of Statelessness. And so we're calling for states to consider jointly or individually to hold the government of Nicaragua accountable at the International Court of Justice.
Thank you. Okay, any more questions from the room? All right, we'll take one online, a couple online. The first is from Gabriela. If you could please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much for this briefing. And I'm Gabriela Sotomayor from Proceso México and El Nacional de Venezuela. My questions are, you mentioned that those violations of human rights are more than generalized and systematic. They are systemic. So would you say that this may amount to crimes against humanity? Do you think that this is also one of the violations that could go to the international justice? I see International Penal Justice or Corte Internacional. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot the name in English, but you just mentioned it. That is one question, and the other is what do you think about the Human Rights Council? Because you are mentioning in your report that these violations are from 2018, and we are in 2025. So do you think that the situation of Nicaragua has been forgotten by the Human Rights Council? What happened there? I mean, there are countries that are very powerful and they don't want to talk about this, about Nicaragua. What are your thoughts on this? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your question. To begin with the last question, the Human Rights Council has not forgotten Nicaragua. The very reason why we are sitting here is that the Human Rights Council extended our initial mandate of 1 year for another 2 years, and we expect the Human Rights Council to extend our mandate that is running out by the end of this month for another 2 years. This is as to the Human Rights Council. As to your first question, we came to the conclusion since our very first report that there is an ongoing attack against the civilian population as a contextual element of crimes against humanity, and inter alia came to the conclusion that there are reasonable grounds to believe that the crime of persecution on political grounds is being committed in Nicaragua. You will find in our report that we come at this time to the conclusion that this attack is ongoing, and this is the very reason why many of the human rights violations that we have detected in the last cycle of investigations would qualify under those acts of violations that are listed under customary international law as crimes against humanity. And having said customary international law, there is no jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court prima facie. There might be some elements in the violations that we found that have extraterritorial implications that might trigger our jurisdiction of the court. Bangladesh is a case in point here, but this is at that point speculative. So we wouldn't say that there is no jurisdiction, but it is more complicated to make a case on Nicaragua at present. Now, what we have said since the first mandate we have is that once there would be a transition in Nicaragua, there is a possibility to refer the case to the court, but the best ones ratified the Rome Statute. And there have been cases in Africa that have been practicing this. But the best way to do justice regarding the human rights violations once there is a transition in Nicaragua is to have people standing trial in Nicaragua, which will be the building block for a new rule of law in the country.
Okay, I think Gabriela had a follow-up. Please go ahead, and then we'll go to the next question.
Yes, thank you very much. You mentioned that the international community could unify and refer the case to the International Criminal Court. But what else can the international community do to try to persuade the government of Nicaragua to call for elections or, to have this transition, this change? What else can they do? Thank you.
Sure. First of all, let's be clear. We were not talking about the International Criminal Court. As Jan mentioned, the International Criminal Court does not have jurisdiction necessarily over Nicaragua, which is not a state party. We've been talking about the International Court of Justice, which resolves disputes between states. Nicaragua is actually the country that has gone more to the International Court of Justice against other countries than any country has in the last 20 years. And we believe that states, and we call on states, to hold Nicaragua accountable for its violations of the UN Convention on Torture, for the UN Convention on Statelessness, before the International Court of Justice. The international community cannot just bear witness. It needs to take concrete measures. These include targeted sanctions against members of the government. And in our report, we say that we have a number of names of people who, in addition to Daniel Ortega and Rosario Murillo, we believe there are sufficient grounds to say they have a case to answer for their participation in crimes. We will be publishing we will be sending these names to the government of Nicaragua, and at the end of this session, we will be publishing a report that contains many of these names. And we believe that these are people who could face ultimately potentially criminal liability or targeted sanctions. Prosecutions like the one that have gone on in Argentina, we believe could be started potentially in other countries. So this is the international community cannot remain silent as Nicaragua descends into silence and repression.
Just to add to that question, and thank you for the question about, I know there's a lack of hopes to how to dismantle this situation and enter into a process to recover democracy. And we have a lot of meeting with victims and people outside Nicaragua or people in different forums and ask for the same question. As Jan mentioned, the Human Rights Council does not forget Nicaragua, and that is the reason that we are here, and we expect the renewal of the mandate. But also a lot of recommendation that Richard mentioned that we have been enlarged recommendations in our first report. Also, we just for the public to know, we maintain several meetings, bilateral meetings and multilateral meetings with a lot of government of different parts of the world, and to make sure that the Nicaragua situation is on the table, and we discuss different possible ways to those countries to strengthen their effort to make to put Nicaragua in the spotlight. I also mentioned always that there are certain, and I know I'm going to stay in the obvious, but there are certain conflicts in the world that overshadow the Nicaragua situation. Venezuela is one case, and we are not talking about Venezuela. We are here to talking about Nicaragua, and another, as you know, several wars that unfortunately are ongoing. So it's a particular situation that we are trying to enforce all the recommendation. Even we in our report talking about what I focus on people deprived of nationality and confiscation of assets. We also thanks a lot of country for giving certain documents to the people that are living abroad to facilitate document to them to continue with their life. So we call also to ensure that refugee status determination and asylum process, including under the broader criteria of the Cartagena Declaration of Refugee, could be something that the rest of the country can help. So there's many actions that we are taking to make sure that we can track the situation of Nicaragua and call the international community for actions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll take another question online, this one from Laurent Sierro from the Swiss News Agency. Please go ahead.
Thanks for the press conference. Could you elaborate on the role of Rosario Murillo? Because you mentioned the top-down chain of command, and that's constitutional reform. So what does that new status of co-president change in that in that machinery that you mentioned? And how are the hierarchies between the presidential couple organized in order to lead the machinery of violations? Thank you.
Well, to begin with, whether there's a vice president or a co-president is, in political terms, important, but if it is in like the actual and ongoing violations and the chains of command that are de facto links and not formal links only, in many cases there are over shadowed by institutions, but the links are on a personal level, mainly through the party structure. And this is where we have identified the main role of Rosario Murillo. Rosario Murillo is, if you will see in the annex to our report, I have called here in the tentacles, is normally the tentacle that is used through the party structure within the different patterns of violations that we have identified, the head of these chains of command. And that's her role, in fact. And whether she's co-president or not doesn't make any difference in this regard. The co-presidency may have some implications regarding succession in the political regime in Nicaragua, but not in terms of the operations of the violations that we have been detecting since the last 3 years.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to back to Gabriela. If you could please go ahead.
Thank you very much. My question is, did you try to meet with authorities of Nicaragua here in Geneva? What did they say about the report? If you can share with us what happened, and if you're going to meet especially about Nicaragua with the High Commissioner for Human Rights. Thank you.
Sorry. We have been sending since the beginning of our mandate 16 not verbal, so formal communications to the authorities, also through the mission that represents Nicaragua here in Geneva. At the beginning of our mandate, the government of Nicaragua sent a letter to the Secretary General of the United Nations and the President of the Council, denying our existence. And this has been, since then, the relation or non-relation that we had with the government. Nevertheless, we were reaching out and still reach out. The last not verbal we sent on the 10th of December, on the Human Rights Day last year, and we hadn't received any response. We, of course, according to best practices and the usage diplomatique, share our draft reports always with the government, seeking their point of view, but as in the last 3 occasions, this time we haven't received any reaction of the government to. We will share also the findings on individual responsibilities that will then be published in the conference room paper by the end of the 58th session of the Council, and expect the government to react and engage on this. But so we do our due diligence both in diplomatic and in legal terms, and we would expect the government to do the same.
In addition, just to make clear to Gabriela, I think it's the person that asked the question, to make clear, we never been able to go to the territory of Nicaragua. So all the interview and all the things that we documented, which is a lot, as John said at the very beginning of the conference, it's all in mission on the field in countries outside Nicaragua. We've never been able to be in the territory, which made more difficult, obvious, to the member of the group and to the investigation staff to access to information in both sides. So that to clarify also another point of your questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions from the room or online? Okay. If not, do you guys have any more, anything else to add? Anyone? Okay. All right. Well, that wraps up this press conference today. Thank you for joining us. Thanks.